you ready for the incredible sound of classic rock? No? Good, because now it's time for Visiting the Village.
Welcome to Visiting the Village. My name's Paul Kilduff-Taylor, and joining me once again is the crepuscular Ian Hardingham.
Hello everyone, I've been programming all day, my head's a bit fuzzy, don't know how this is going to go.
Let's get out of this dungeon.
It's the top story.
Pokémon Go has lost a third of its users since its peak last month, according to Popular Science. Does this mean anything, Ian Hardingham?
Okay, does this mean anything? We're kind of in uncharted territory with Pokemon Go, so I'm not going to take, any drop-off in users as gospel on the face of it. I think only having lost a third is probably not that bad, actually. The most important aspect of looking at user drop-off figures is to look at how the game is currently selling. Because I don't care what game it is. It could be the most addictive game in the whole world. It's still going to have an exponential drop-off curve after a couple of days of people playing it. It's just the way things go. People can really enjoy a game they've just bought, and you'd be surprised what percentage of people who've bought a game will stop playing after 2 days. It's just really normal behaviour for people. Games just don't retain at 75% over a long period of time. Now, these are regular users already, so this stats analysis is talking about people who've already been pegged as people who've been playing Pokemon Go regularly, so supposedly people who are already kind of hooked on it, and they've lost a third of those. So after all of that boilerplate stuff, yeah, I do think there's a problem with Pokemon Go. I think that they had an amazing first hour or two onboarding experience, but they don't have an amazing first 20 hours, and this is probably being reflected in these figures, Paul Kilduff-Taylor.
Yeah, as we're going to come on to talk about, benchmarking these figures is difficult, understanding them is difficult, and it is one of those things where the metric of success for every game is going to be different. It's one of those annoying stats where it doesn't compare very well unless a game is very precisely in the same genre, it's very precisely has the same audience, and as you say, one of the most important factors in that is the total size of the audience. If you get everyone in the world to play a game for a day, then you've probably made a lot of money. You don't need to do anything else. So those are all the factors here. I mean, I think Pokemon Go, we argue, discuss a lot about why different features matter in games and which user experiences matter. I think it's very clear that Pokemon Go has a big trough in the experience after you start playing it. I think that's just empirically true. And even for people who get really excited about it, who have collected loads of Pokemon, I think those people feel that burn, that drop-off and tension after a while. So I really think that's a real factor for this game.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think that there's a problem there. I mean, the basic grind, the basic gameplay of Pokemon Go is going around where you live and other places, trying to find Pokemon and catching them. That's cool, but if you think about what you do for like your 50th hour of Clash of Clans or something, that's not the same thing. I mean, it's quite hard work to play Pokemon Go, funnily enough. So because of that, I'm not sort of completely optimistic they're going to sort this out in the short term. I think they've going to have a bit of an identity crisis with this game if they're going to try and move it from an sort of a kind of an interesting. I mean, novelty's a bit too harsh. I don't really mean that.
Yeah,
if it wants to be a game like, Clash or something like that, which people play just completely compulsively on their phones all of the time, then it's going to have a different kind of core gameplay. So I'm not really sure how they're going to pull that off. Having trainer to trainer battling, having fighting being better, adding some more stuff is going to help. I do slightly wonder if they've got a fundamental conceptual problem with this game, if they're looking to convert up to that.
Absolutely, I agree with all of that. I mean, I think a big problem is the goal structure of the game. So you start the game, you want to collect some Pokemon, then you want to get the more interesting, rarer Pokemon, you want to level them up, and then you want to start doing stuff with gyms, and then that's kind of it. You don't have a big, future goal. I agree. I think PvP could be amazing for the game, direct PvP, and could really, really transform it. I think that would get people playing for longer. But as with all of these things, you have to have somewhere to go. And Clash of Clans and that sort of game really do have that. They really sort of show you things in the future. They show you how you're going to improve versus other people. And I think for a long-term success, games definitely need that.
Yeah, it didn't really show me that I was going to be able to keep playing in a way that I liked and actually start to collect them all. Collecting them all is still the primary goal of this game. And I totally feel like I've collected all of the Pokemon that are likely to come around near me and be easy to just catch on the street. I've done basically all of those. And now I have to start hatching eggs and pissing about and going to really weird places. Maybe I'm going to have to trade in the future. If I had a better idea that if I just kept on playing it for like 20 minutes a day, maybe changing some aspects of my behavior up, I was going to keep making progress, then that would have kept me playing for longer. So I think that you call it a trough, yeah, I think they've got a mid-game problem, and that's certainly how it worked for me. I don't have any particular desire to walk to a gym and then do whatever the combat is like. All of the creatures I see at gyms are pretty high-powered, and I've kind of seen into the grind, and it's, again, a problem that we talk about a lot with these very modern games, these very multiplayer games. It's that mid-level stuff where you've got through the really exciting initial bit, and you start to learn what it's going to take to be good, and then you realise you don't want to do that, because what it takes to be good requires you to be a completely obsessive teenager with a huge amount of time on your hands. And once again, a lot of the stuff that goes into the way I design games is about trying to avoid that. The requirement to have put 500 hours into something for you to be truly competitive is not really a working thing for me.
Well, that's a good point to pivot, I think, onto the other related topic, which is to do with No Man's Sky. And PC Gamer are reporting that No Man's Sky's concurrent users have dropped 88% after launch, but also that this isn't unusual when compared to other games. So we can talk about that, and then we can talk about why afterwards.
Yeah, so I think I've seen on Twitter that you were complaining about the stats involved with this. I'm going to complain about the stats involved with this. I love PC Gamer, and I'm absolutely sure that Andy Chalk is a great writer. There's a pretty big fallacy, I'm pretty sure, in this article. They are comparing the drop-off. So let me just be completely clear on what metrics they are using here. They are talking about simultaneous players of a game at a specific time. So on launch day, No Man's Sky apparently had at some point 212,000 simultaneous players. 2 weeks later, it's 88% less than that. Now, they are saying that that's not that unusual by comparing that to data for how other games have fallen after launch, but they're comparing No Man's Sky after 2 weeks with Fallout 4 et al. After 4 weeks. Now, as I said earlier in this very podcast, player drop-off is exponential. You cannot make a meaningful comparison between one game after 2 weeks and another game after 4 weeks. You just absolutely can't. So I'm kind of, unless I'm missing something, and I don't think I am, this is just sort of a completely nonsensical comparison. So do you have a response to that first?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what they're using, I think what you've said is necessarily true. I think the problem is it's the best data available problem. So there isn't, if you look on SteamDB and Steam Spy, you're going to get monthly data.
Yeah, that's fine. So I agree with that, right? But then if you're going to say that because No Man's Sky dropped 88% in 2 weeks, and let me pick up another example. So Far Cry Primal dropped 82% after 4 weeks. You cannot then say that implies that No Man's Sky has not had a bad drop-off. That implies No Man's Sky has had an exceptionally bad drop-off. Because again, it's the exponential curve. If Primal's lost less than No Man's Sky in 4 weeks, then No Man's Sky has done in 2 weeks, then that would be very bad for No Man's Sky. But the whole thing, I think, is a bit silly. Again, No Man's Sky had a huge number of sales on day one. It had a huge amount of PR attention at the first week. probably had like a shorter, stronger PR thing than, say, Far Cry Primal had. So you're going to have a lot of also sort of more casual gamers picking up because they're really interested in it. So there are lots of reasons behind that. So I think the stats are a bit bonus here. I think the analysis isn't quite right. On its own, losing 88% of your people in 2 weeks, as it were, doesn't raise any massively red flags for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I don't have the comparison here. And again, I want to return to my earlier point, which is that you need to be comparing almost like for like genre. And No Man's Sky is such a weird outlier that I just don't see how you could come up with a useful metric for comparison. I mean, it is interesting that concurrent users have sort of gone down by a chunk. Like, that's an interesting thing to talk about. It does generally happen with most games. So maybe we can talk about why. Eurogamer have a video about the lack of emergence in No Man's Sky. So this is stressing the idea that there's a lot of procedurally generated content, but there's very little potential for interaction between the units of said content, and therefore very few interesting emergent situations result. And I actually like that take on the game. I think that's quite a good specific analysis of the game. You don't see things interacting very much. And I think No Man's Sky is one of those games where you have to buy into its focus. Its focus is on going to these procedurally generated planets that have a particular character. And if you like the kind of variation that is possible with their generator, you will happily play this game for 30, 40, 50 hours. If you don't, you will stop playing after an hour. And it's going to be very divisive. So if we're talking, say this is a big drop-off, which I think is possibly likely, that could be one of the reasons why. A lot of people just won't buy into the core of this game.
Sure, I mean, absolutely. I think that it's probably completely true that the more sales you have at launch, the bigger a percentage drop-off you're going to have, basically. Because, if you have... I'm going to make a ridiculous example here, and I apologise for that, but if you're an extremely hardcore game and you only have 500 sales, there's also a good chance those 500 people are very invested in your game, and they may drop off extremely slowly. If everyone on the planet buys it, most of them are not going to play the next day, and that doesn't reflect badly on the game, honestly.
Yeah.
It can be true in all different media. So I think that there are plenty of sort of meta reasons for this that don't go to the game's quality. Apart from anything else, simultaneous people playing on a day is going to be far, far, far more correlated with sales in the last 3 days than it is with anything about the game's quality or what it's like or how it's connecting with people. So this is much more, for me, about marketing and about how games stay in the public consciousness and what different games perform in different ways over the first 3 weeks than it is about No Man's Sky. But with all of that said... you're a big fan of No Man's Sky, and that's awesome. I wasn't able to get past some of the mechanic stuff for me. I really like, as you do, what this thing that it doesn't produce any sort of emergent gameplay, even though it's got so much procedural generation. I think that is definitely true and a really good point.
Yeah.
I think, and again, I'm really looking forward to playing the sequel to this because I think that I will be able to come to that with a more appropriate set of expectations, and I'm going to be surprised in better ways. The problem was that because there was so much excitement and hype about all the different ways in which this game might fulfill what they were sort of promising initially early on. They fulfilled it in this one direction, but there were so many different ways they could. It was difficult for me not to view it mainly as a disappointment and look at the things that didn't happen that I would have liked rather than the things that did happen. With a sequel, I think I'm much more likely to be able to focus on what they've added that is really interesting than focusing on the stuff that isn't there for me.
I wonder if they would ever make a sequel to this game. It seems like a very specific thing to me. I mean, it's interesting that they're adding stuff, and I expect we'll see... I really am calling larger fleets coming back into the game. That really looks like something that was scaled down for performance reasons or other reasons. So I think they'll add stuff like that, and they'll add some new things. But it seems to be very specific, and it doesn't seem to be the kind of thing that if you had developed that game, I don't think you'd want to make a sequel. So that's kind of unfortunate. I don't want to draw this out too much, but I just want to sort of circle around. Obviously, I wrote an article about this that got some attention, and I've had a lot of interaction with people who have bought the games, some of whom kind of were happily taking my points and others of whom weren't. But one of the interesting things that someone said to me was, we were talking about pre-orders. So the main anger around the game comes from people who pre-ordered it on the basis of the marketing and then felt disappointed when they got the game. Which I think is legitimate. I think, if you pre-ordered this game for a specific reason and you then feel disappointed, you're having a legitimate response. But someone said that the reason he pre-orders games is so that he and a specific group of friends know they're going to be playing the same game at the same time. And if you wait until reviews and everything comes out, people start having different opinions about it, and some of them don't buy it. You don't end up playing it with them. So to preserve their social gaming experience, they will take the risk of pre-ordering games. And then, might feel disappointed when they've sort of been missold the game in their feeling. And that's very interesting to me. There's a very interesting social dynamic going on here. And I think a lot of this drop-off might well be due to people pre-ordering the game, playing it and going, I don't like this, it doesn't match the thing I had in my head, and then immediately stopping playing. I think it's all interrelated.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think that sort of those little conceptual, analytical concepts, in my opinion, probably always just sort of pale in comparison to sort of brute core maths. So that might, for instance, be why 5 of this 88% maybe that high do it. Definitely, I could definitely buy that. If I was trying to think of something overwhelming about No Man's Sky that could lead to it dropping off faster than something like Fallout 4 or the aforementioned Far Cry Primal, it doesn't have as much of a sort of a core addiction loop as those games, which actually works in its favour for me. But yeah, I still think that it's likely to be small sort of tenths of percentages that are controlled by that kind of thing, rather than anything larger than that.
Maths is the winner. Unity is going to integrate support for Facebook's current gaming platform as well as its new one. Does this mean anything?
Interesting. This is a pretty cool story. I like talking about Unity and I like talking about Facebook. And now they're combining. I think Facebook, whose relative woes we've talked about at length, they obviously desperately want you to play games on their website. We don't need to explain why. Advertising dollars, they want you to be engaged with the website all the time. If they could sell you a computer that only used Facebook, they definitely would. And actually, I feel like they haven't been at all successful in doing that yet. And while I think both of us agree that people don't want to play hardcore games in a browser, lots of people want to play casual games in a browser, and people should be using Unity to make casual games for Facebook's audience. I think that there is a way that Facebook can leverage the kind of advantages it has with you and your friends on their website that it just hasn't yet. So I'm kind of interested to see where this goes. I don't think it's meaningful to us or to people who are interested in hardcore PC games, but I do I'd like to see what Facebook's best attempt at Facebook gaming is.
So the interesting thing about this to me is that it democratizes making games for Facebook. So that had been the preserve of very specific types of developer in the past. And it means that if someone has some weird idea for a game that does need Facebook features or is going to massively benefit from them, they can now do that. So I think that's good for everyone, really. I mean, the current sort of received wisdom is that Facebook gaming really dropped off as mobile boomed. So all your Farmvilles and everything, all that stuff moved over to mobile. But I still think that there's probably a lot of value to be mined from Facebook gaming because it's a place where people spend time. Much as Facebook try to eliminate that by their UI decisions, people do want to spend a lot of time on Facebook, and wherever people are, they'll play games.
Sorry to cut in. I think that my narrative for exactly what's happened with Facebook gaming so far is that it exploded with your Farmvilles, which was using posting to your friends' feeds in a really bad way. Then Facebook realised that was actually causing them a problem, and they sort of immediately stamped it out properly, which led to that kind of Facebook gaming sort of immediately becoming a lot less popular as well. For me, if a game is going to work on Facebook for me, it needs to be part of the screen at all times. not like an extra tab I go to and then play the game specifically on that. I know that's kind of a weird request, and that may be too strange, but the kind of game that I imagine enjoying on Facebook is something that's always open, and is something that sort of I'm interacting with whenever I want to, and not a different mode that I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine there being an audience for that kind of thing. I think, again, it's that thing, you know, it's about pulling someone into playing a game. I feel like if you're on Facebook already, you can be pulled into playing a game, and that doesn't require you to interact with the core features of Facebook. It's a bit like saying I want to be able to use my phone while I'm playing a game on my phone. I'm sure that would be useful to some people, but I don't think it's going to be core to getting the huge investment that you want from players.
Sure, I mean, I think that the Facebook website has an awful lot of different things on the front page. Like, it wants you to be able to do everything somewhat at once. Keep your feed updating, chatting with people, like obviously having a look at adverts and stuff. So yeah, I guess you go in for like a 10-minute casual game experience, then you come back out. It's that kind of stuff where I just wonder if Facebook's going to be able to compete, like say with mobile. I feel like the place where Facebook can actually bring something unusual to the table is something that much more directly embraces what the experience of using Facebook is like, rather than just using Facebook as a portal, which I feel is a bit boring. I mean, that's obviously, by far the most normal thing that they're going to try. And I just don't know if they're going to have much success with that, because they've been trying that for quite a long time. But that may be overly negative.
Well, no, it's interesting because I remember those Mafia games and vampire games and so on that were just amazingly annoying brute force ways of involving other people. If you did something like that, I think sometimes when you developers brute force a kind of social element, and people get turned off from it, and then nobody develops that way. If you bring back that social element in a subtle way, if you go to the next stage of evolution with it in a way that people will tolerate again, then you can have a big win. So I actually completely agree with you. I think there is some core Facebook feature that someone could use to make a really popular game.
Yeah, it's almost like I want to log into Facebook, and just like I log into Facebook to check if my friends have messaged me, or if anyone's posted a new picture of their child, I almost want the game to be putting an update on my feed that I immediately interact with. Not an update reminding me to play, but an update of like the next decision I have to make. And that to be integrated into the experience I have of using Facebook anyway. But I'll stop going off on that lines now. But if I was ever to design a Facebook game, I want to go down that route.
All right. The PCG Archive, which I discovered today, has a piece about the history of generative dungeons. In 1977, the play-by-mail company Flying Buffalo released a computer-generated dungeon, that's the title, for their Tunnels and Trolls role-playing system. Fans could pay $5 to order their very own dungeon, including customization options for naming the monster in the dungeon and the player's name in the running footer. This is 1977. Does this mean anything?
This is pretty cool. To just try and explain this concept really succinctly for people, just imagine a choose your adventure book. Choose your own adventure, like what's the most popular one of those called?
Fighting fantasy.
Yes, fighting fantasy. So those books where you'd read a paragraph and then say, if you choose to jump in the swamp, goes to page 70. If you choose to stab yourself in the chest, goes to page 71. Just imagine this is literally basically a randomly generated one of those. It's incredibly similar to these books, actually, even though it's technically their Tunnels and Trolls role-playing system, which is an awesome name for anything. And what was really funny is that they worked quite hard to make this modular. So they would try and have the results of actions, like there's an example here of a vampire attacking you, and if you choose to attack it back, it turns out it's a mirage controlled by a short, weird-looking fellow. And the idea being that the bit about it being a mirage controlled by a short, weird-looking fellow is agnostic of it having been a vampire, because in this randomly different generated thing, it can be quite a lot of different creatures. So they'd obviously done some actual work on making, generative dungeons and generative stories, kind of. So this is just really cool, and the by far the coolest element of this, which the article picks up on, is that in most games that have generative content, the whole idea is that you can keep restarting them and keep experiencing different content. But the funny thing about this is that you only ever got to see one result of the generator.
Yes.
It was sent to you in paper format. You didn't get to see what all the other ones were like, which is actually kind of subtly and also fundamentally different to something like Starbound, where every time you start a new game, you're seeing a different form of generator in action.
Yeah, absolutely. I think awareness of procedural generation is something that people kind of really want. Like you want to know that the generator is doing stuff. And in Starbound and those games you can, whereas for this, some dude could have written it. One thing I liked about this is it wasn't very popular, I think, because of the features you've discussed weren't particularly compelling. And they stopped making them when the computer broke that was generating them. I think maybe they didn't save the software, which is quite amazing. So, yeah, this kind of super early efforts to do things exist throughout gaming, but I really wasn't expecting this to have happened that early.
Yeah, well, it's an awesome story.
Sony are raising the price of PS Plus, but only in the US and Canada, according to their blog. Quote, starting on September 22nd, prices for PlayStation Plus memberships will change to $59.99 USD, $69.99 CAD for 12 months, and $24.99 USD, $29.99 CAD for 3 months, etc. Does this mean anything?
No, I mean, PS Plus is a very successful, very popular subscription plan. Everything goes up with inflation a little bit. I think Netflix has just increased its price. It's not just inflation. They're all trying to find the right level, and they'd like to be at the top of the right level. So they're going to push things up until they get some pushback, I guess. I think PS Plus faces a challenge of what to do now it's so firmly established in terms of offering free games. I think that Sony are already seeing that they're trying to work out where to put the funding to fund games they can put on PS Plus, how much they need to pay developers to put a game on PS Plus. It's an evolving thing, and I think that the early excitement of getting these free games every month and how awesome and new that was has faded to a certain extent, and they've got to continue making really compelling. They're looking into other avenues that aren't just free games as well. So I don't think it means anything particularly. I'm still a big fan of PS Plus.
I'm interested by this. I mean, yes, inflation and so on is a factor, but I wonder if they've seen some drop off and they're now thinking, okay, we have a smaller, more committed group of users, we need to increase the price, to make it viable. And just what would it look like if they dropped the price? Like, what would that be for? There might be something else going on here, because I don't think they've maintained the slate of really, really compelling games throughout. I've seen a lot of people say they're gonna quit using it now. It's confusing to me.
If they're losing customers, I kind of would imagine that the first thing they would try is to lower the price. But that's just my off-the-cuff idea. Maybe completely wrong. Yeah, I don't know if they think that they need to increase the quality of the free games, in which case that could definitely involve them needing to increase the price. But, if it's been 2 years since they last increased it, it's probably about time for them to increase it.
Yeah.
I think, again, stuff like Netflix, Now TV, they're all finding that $10 is about the right level. I think people have generally decided that they go much beyond $12 and people start having a problem with it. And that people are generally cool with 10. So I think it's always going to hover around there. It's important to remember, to remind myself, that you have to have PlayStation Plus to play multiplayer on Sony platforms. So they've got to make it an accessible level for kids as well. It's quite a lot, actually, having to pay $10 a month to play multiplayer. But
yeah, a lot of people saying, they should separate it and so on, which really misses the point. But the games are kind of a sweetener on top of this multiplayer fee. I mean, just as a package though, generally there's going to be one game every month that you at least want to try. And getting the multiplayer services for $10 a month, I think, is very good still.
Oh yeah, I still think it's a great value proposition. In terms of anyone who suggests they should split these up, I'd like to respond with an image of the Amazon Prime head, laughing.
Yes.
Given that he wants to put every single thing in one subscription package, which I think is generally the right call, commercially.
Yeah, no, it's very clear where that happens. Zenimax are alleging that John Carmack stole thousands of files from them in order to develop the Oculus Rift. According to Eurogamer, the complaint has been amended to accuse Carmack very directly of stealing files, even after his employment was terminated in the summer of 2013, shortly before he became Oculus's chief technology officer on the 1st of August that year. Does this mean anything?
I think there's smoke here, and I think there is fire here. Let me tell you my narrative of what is going on. This business with the stealing of files is merely the most sort of legally, let's say, specific thing they can bring up. Zenimax are sure that Palmer Luckey, is that how you pronounce his name?
Yeah.
They are convinced that Palmer Luckey came to John Carmack with the Oculus Rift and said, we need some help with this. And John Carmack got a few buddies working at Zenimax to help him out. Sort of broadly in their free time. I think it probably spilled over into professional time as well. But basically, I do believe that John Carmack got a bunch of people who worked for Zenimax involved in very early Oculus Rift stuff. And I believe Zenimax feel that Oculus should have paid them some money for this. Basically, John Carmack and his friends ended up leaving Zenimax to go and work for Oculus after they'd done quite a lot of work on it. And I think Zenimax has, a case there. I think that Oculus probably should give them a bit of money. And Oculus has sort of stonewalled them. And Zenimax are now going all out. And for me, the stealing of files is probably literally that John Carmack accidentally took a memory stick out of the office. And that's like sort of neither here nor there. But they're trying to get something that will actually stick, that's actually against the law. And that's the thing that they're focusing on.
Yeah, it's very transparently an attempt to demonstrate that he was working on it using resources from it. I mean, that's clearly what this is. Now, John Carmack is famously very sort of non-litigious, I guess, is probably not the right phrase, but he's very violently opposed to certain components of IP law, particularly software patents. So for him to get embroiled in this, it does seem like it could potentially be a sort of perfect storm of things where, hypothetically things could have happened and then he, maybe went outside of what his arrangement was with Zenimax. But this is really sad to see this happening. It just makes me feel depressed. Like, you've got someone who's a big champion for the freedom of particularly programmers to work on projects, freedom of ideas. And then he's got embroiled in this kind of tiresome, like, oh, this thing made a lot of money, so let's find any legal pretext we possibly can to get our teeth into it. And that's just sad. Like, that's going to confirm all of this guy's worst suspicions.
Yeah, I'm a little... I'm not quite as negative on ZeniMax as that. In my perspective, like, I think there's a very good chance that some meaningful time that they paid for was spent working on this, basically. So I don't think this is a cash grab. These guys have a lot of stuff going on. They've got a lot of money themselves. I actually think they genuinely perceive a slight here, not that they're trying to piggyback off Oculus's success.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's... It's very difficult to talk about this without making emphatic statements, which of course we can't. But in the situation where time was spent on this, they would have a legitimate grievance. But it's the extent to which this is now going to blow up into a giant thing. Because they've amended what their original complaint to include this specific detail about this thing. And that to me really feels like, they're really going to get their teeth into this. This is going to get really serious now. It's not just floating something out early to sort of get a settlement and be like, oh yeah, I spent an hour on this and yeah, you can have some money. It's more like they're going for this. They really see an opportunity in that. And whether that's legitimate or not, it's not for us to pass judgment. But the whole thing in total, I find.
Yeah, it could be because they see an opportunity. I think it's as likely that it is now a grudge. That Zenimax quite possibly made a reasonable offer to just be sort of given some recompense, and they were pushed back, and now they just don't want to lose. That they just want to push it because they the people at the top of this company are people who have a lot of money and they're used to winning and they don't want to be screwed over, even no matter how slightly, and that it's a grudge, which is probably almost worse. But yeah, I mean, I think it is sad for John Carmack, who I can't imagine he felt he was doing anything wrong. And in fact, John Carmack probably feels that he's senior enough that if he wanted to play around with Oculus Rift for a couple of weeks, that would be totally fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do think it's a bit sad for him.
Yeah, and it's a mess, and I think things like this are counterproductive for the future development of technology. I'm not a sort of full-on techno-hippie in regards to that. Legal stuff is legal stuff, and it happens, and it needs to exist. But equally, someone like Carmack, who is going to be very drawn to these specific ideas, and let's face it, probably would go in without much kind of legal awareness from time to time. To have someone like that tied down to something like this is frustrating. So I hope it works out.
Yes.
PC Gamer has a history of hit points, starting from their origins in early D&D. Hit points, do they mean anything?
Yeah, I don't like hit points. There's a reason we don't have any hit points in Frozen Synapse and Frozen Cortex, probably different reasons. Yeah, and if you look at the evolution of games, sort of hit points have gone from being something very sort of tangible to being stuff that game designers keep trying to get around. Yes. Halo started off just, trying to regenerate your hit points at any possible opportunity. And people, as they've got more modern game design, people have worked out that hit points cause a problem. So what they do mechanically is that they vastly increase the range of outcomes of a specific scenario, because obviously you do a room in Half-Life and you leave with 1 health. That's very different from doing the room and leaving with full health. And that kind of takes away actually sort of control from the designer and tends to lead the player to having weird thoughts, because do you want to construct the challenge such that death is the only outcome that sort of matters, and you don't want to make people feel really bad about having got killed a little bit. Basically there are generally better ways of doing things than giving you 100 hit points with which to complete a level. But yeah, going back into the history of stuff, it's pretty cool. They reckon that Dungeons and Dragons is where it all started.
It's interesting, yes, the way you phrase that is of course, very apposite. It increases the range of possible outcomes to an encounter. I don't see that many games where you have a very small number of hit points, because it feels to me like people either go for nothing or 100. There's no game where you have kind of 2 hit points.
Yeah, I think that when
rare.
you get low, people start just sort of mixing it up with lives. So GTA 1 is like the first game that I think of when it comes to only having 3 health.
Yes.
But they kind of, and they have lives as well. So there are games that do that. And of course, that's massively mechanically different. Like your expectation, if you've got Spelunky and you've got 4 health, and it's really hard to regenerate them, the value of being hit at all, that's shown what they want from the design. And if it's an FPS with 100 hit points, that shows you that they don't care anywhere near as much about it. So yeah.
The other thing is it allows for less flexibility in player error. So when you have a lot of hit points, you can kind of get away with a lot more stuff. I mean, depending on the game, obviously, but it's tended to be used to allow the player to mess around more. Whereas if you have no hit points, as you do in FS, if you make a mistake with that unit, the unit dies, and you lose the encounter. So the increased complexity here actually is nicer to the player in a lot of cases.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got some deep thoughts about hit points.
Thoughts.
Yeah, it's such an unusual thing to research. I'm really glad PC Gamer did. I don't know. It feels like the old discussion of which game scoring system is the best. Do you prefer having 10 hit points, or 3, or 100, or however many Famitsu would have? Yeah.
Indeed. Microsoft have released a onesie, which looks like an Xbox. It's called the Xbox Onesie. Does this mean anything?
Means absolutely nothing at all.
GameSpot has an article up entitled How Star Citizen Plans to Do Much of What No Man's Sky Doesn't, which is what counts for grammar these days. Star Citizen is attempting to create a coherent universe with stations, space combat, planets, and all sorts of malarkey. My own grammar failed. 2 questions. Are we in the era of hopelessly ambitious space games, and does this mean anything?
I don't know if this is an era yet. I definitely love the take that Star Citizen is sort of actually sort of authentically trying to do everything that No Man's Sky sort of hinted at. I like that take. It's only a take. That's all it is.
It's a take.
But I like it. I think my personal feelings on Star Citizen have jumped up recently. I don't really know why. I think I've seen them spend a long time trying to do it right now, and I actually now have some faith that they're trying to make a game that I would like. I've seen a lot of their demos recently, and the way they're approaching the development of this game. If this gets in any way finished, this is going to be a game I really, really want to play. So I'm actually kind of close to pre-ordering this now, because the completely bizarre scenario that led to them having $70 or $80 million in pre-orders, whatever it is, has actually led to something very cool happening, potentially. So yes, I'm actually kind of all on board with Star Citizen now.
Well, that's interesting. Everything I've seen recently, this talks about the various demos they're showing where they're going between these different stations and planets, and it's still very contained. You've got the Derek Smarts of this world who are saying it's all canned, it's all a lie, everything is a lie. I'm not on that pole, and I'm not sort of further towards your pole either. I'm kind of in the middle on this. Like I'm gonna play it if it is a finished game where you can play it, but at the moment everything I'm seeing just looks like nonsense. Like the eventual game could be anything as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, fair enough. I still think that they are trying to put an insane number of properly cohesive and actually realistic features in. That's just sort of what I think that they're trying to do right now. Now, in 2 years, someone's going to get bored and something's going to happen. So I'm kind of hoping that they make the game by then. That's sort of the deadline for me.
Yeah.
But I think this has still got quite a lot of potential to be something really, really interesting. I still feel like when they look at a feature, they're like, how can we do this in a way that's meaningful? Not how can we make it look like this is something you can do, but can't actually do or doesn't actually mean anything within the system. So that's just how I perceive their design process to be, which is something that I like.
Yeah, we shall see. Esports now, and Riot have had a big bust up with some teams over pre-tournament patches, limitations on revenue streams, and diversification into other esports, according to GamesIndustry.biz and Eurogamer. Does this mean anything?
Yeah, so a big team owner, Andy Reginald DinH, criticised Riot Games for releasing a major patch just ahead of the World Championships. It seems like a legitimate complaint to me. He said it was like changing the weight of a basketball shortly before the playoffs start, which is a silly analogy, but it kind of highlights that making a very big gameplay changing patch just before, I guess, your biggest tournament of the year is a fairly bad idea. I mean, of course, the guy is mainly complaining because his team lost, but a lot of people are upset about this. The sort of the highlight of the story for me is that Riot co-founder Mark Merrill sort of gave the guy a bit of an epic burn, saying that he's making a profit with his teams in League of Legends, but he's losing money with the other esports he's investing in, saying that he shouldn't invest in other esports. And again, that's fine for the founder of a league, or in this case a developer, to say, but it's all getting a bit sort of Friday Night Lightsy.
Well, this is the sort of end game of your perennial complaint of Riot owning everything. The teams that are involved with them now are extremely frustrated that there's this very sort of, difficult, pernickety company who own everything they do, and they want to just get out of League of Legends. They want to do more things. Esports still continuing to grow and diversify and all that sort of thing. So I understand the discontentment here, and also, pre-tournament patches are just some of the worst things in esports. There's a real legitimate complaint here. A single patch can absolutely ruin an entire tournament, both for fans and for players. So companies have to be really careful about that, and I hope Riot are not sort of just going, it's fine. We've made enough money from these teams now. It doesn't matter. We'll just stick some patches out. You should never do that.
Yeah, if you're talking about the rules of basketball, because the competitive stuff is the only stuff that matters to that league, obviously, it's their only product, Of course, they're going to make it so that the rule changes happen at the right time. There's loads of time for the officials, for the teams to get used to them before it gets to the regular season or the playoffs. League of Legends, Riot, they still don't know how important competitive play is to them. They know they're paying customers. Their millions and millions of daily paying customers are important. So, this decision obviously means that they haven't got anywhere near as much respect for the World Championships as they do for getting the patch out when they wanted to get it out. And if I was them, how would I know what was relatively more important?
Yeah, I mean, there's been some good and bad precedents set in other competitive games about patches. It's just there doesn't seem to be any need to do this. You've got to just time
you could have
it
just
right.
delayed it for a month. Although again, I mean, if I'm a game designer of this game and I desperately want to get these changes out there, but sure, no, I think that they could have waited a month. It's still a bit frustrating to me that esports. It still doesn't feel like they've got self-sufficient yet. Doesn't feel like there's enough money for all of the people involved to care at the right level and to start doing things in really intelligent ways. Is a good complaint here. I'm going to just read this verbatim. Most LCS teams lose money because stipends are stagnant. Sponsorship for LCS team operations are shrinking. The cost of player salaries, content production, sports staff, and housing costs are spiraling up. And that stuff's all really interesting. Again, it doesn't feel like a very mature area yet. And I think stagnant is the word right now for this whole scene. It doesn't feel like anything's moving forward with like a really profitable, exciting, popular event.
I think Riot have too much control for their own good. And I'm going to tell you why.
Okay.
Here's why. Now they have this system where they own everything. They fundamentally own the teams. Because they have that much control, everything is going to be perceived as their fault. So when the teams start failing, because A, they have control over absolutely everything to do with that, and B, they're not allowing the teams to grow, to diversify, everything is going to come back to haunt them. What you need to do is you need to allow these organizations enough space to develop on their own so that they're strong, and then they can have a mutual relationship with you. You need to have strong teams in your league, and this level of constraint is not going to create that. You can't have an artificial environment where businesses are not allowed to try new business areas. That's just terrible. People need to grow, businesses need to grow, plants need to grow. A plant, if it's not growing, it's dead, Ian. It's dead.
Well said.
Rebellion has bought the rights to a whole host of classic comics, including Roy of the Rovers. Does this mean anything?
So Jason Kingsley, co-founder of Rebellion, was good enough to see me for a little meeting a month or so ago. We sat down and had a chat, and he told me about some of his vast experience in the games industry. And I'm pretty sure it's fair to say that Rebellion believe in buying up IP when it is at a reasonable price.
Yes.
They started this off a long time ago when they bought 2000 AD, a pretty popular comic that has a really good number of properties in for making computer games of. I don't think so far Rebellion have sort of amazingly capitalized on that from the games side. They've had quite a few good 2000 AD games, but they haven't been host to the massive number of games that, say, Games Workshop have with their IP. So when I heard that they bought a load of old comic books properties, I was interested. Because honestly, I think that they've always got an eye on, not only can we sell these comics for a profit for our comics business, but is there a chance that one of these is going to make a really interesting computer game property? So I just put this on for something to talk about, because I don't know which of these weird old properties are going to work. But I think, generally respect people trying to get weird old IP, because that can lead to a really interesting thing to own in games.
Oh, absolutely. IP is hugely important. We talk about concepts so much. We talk about why someone might want to give a game the time of day. And if you have the right IP, particularly if it's one that has a lot of fondness attached to it, but people have sort of almost slightly forgotten about, that's kind of there in the back of your brain, then absolutely, it's going to draw people right in. And this is an interesting acquisition to me. A lot of these comics, they're almost from our parents' generation, kind of Roy of the Rovers, that kind of thing. sort of comics specifically targeted at girls and all of those kind of older things. They've got names like Spiff and Zippo and Bam. Those aren't real ones. I just made them up. And that's really interesting. I'd love to see a game made with those kind of stylings. I don't think that's what they're going to do because that's kind of a weirdly niche market. But just, yes, being in the position, and they know what to do with this kind of IP. They obviously have a successful publishing business, which has kind of survived despite all the odds because of the quality, I think, of 2000 AD. A lot of fans still like it. So it is interesting to have these things in their hands.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just looking at the cover of the Roy of the Rovers issue they've put in this news article, and it's a comic book about football that starts with like a massive cliffhanger. This is the end of regulation in the European Cup final, and one of the players has just been injured. That's such an exciting concept. Like, I want to open the comic book now.
There you go.
More comic books need to have crazy things happening on page one. I'm sure they do.
That's how they get there. Yes.
So yeah, there you go. So be really interesting to see what they do, if anything, with this. But I kind of want to go to some of these old IP auctions and just watch Jason Kingsley, see which ones he bids on. There's some interesting stuff there. I mean, I don't know, in terms of No Man's Sky, one of the reasons it's so amazingly successful is because of the graphical style, which is based on 60s science fiction book covers.
Yeah.
They could find a really amazing graphical art style from one of these old comics, and that in itself could be profitable and pay for the whole thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah, one of the things that games are going to do increasingly is take these external inspirations for aesthetics and make them into something exciting. Just thinking about IP and nostalgia, when I was in Edinburgh on holiday, I went to see Nightmare Live, which is the comedy adult reimagining of the children's TV show Nightmare, which we've talked about much on the show. And it's absolutely brilliant. They have someone from the audience comes up and they put the helmet on, and they're directed by two comedians who sit on the side representing the team, and they act out little scenes. So they have like the shopkeeper scene that you would remember from the TV show where they can choose one of 3 items, and it's so brilliantly done because it's very clearly kind of comedic. They make references to the show, there's in-jokes and stuff like that, but it's done sort of just earnestly enough so it's funny. And maybe when you get these older IPs, you kind of have to play on the nostalgia element in just the right way. You can't be too earnest because that's going to come across false, and you can't be completely self-mocking because this is something people feel affection about. So if you want to see a good example of that, Nightmare Live.
That sounds like a great concept.
It is a great concept. Brock Wilbur over at ZAM watched a Resident Evil play called Biohazard: The Stage that was produced in Japan by Capcom in 2015 and is apparently available on YouTube. It appears to be a bewildering array of nipples, Catholicism, and digital projection. Does this mean anything?
Well, if I was going to try and have a successful show at the Fringe next year, I think doing a random computer game play would be a pretty good call. Trying to get the right level of which game you choose is difficult. I think maybe it just has to be Mario, and then like everyone wants to go and see the weird Mario play before it gets sued.
Yeah.
But certainly I think weird plays based on games property is a growth market.
And it seems very high budget, and as I said in the intro, it was actually produced by Capcom. So we need more publishers to get involved with the stage and games I'd like to see on stage. Well, I'm very annoyed. I'm going to miss the Dear Esther performance on stage at the at the Barbican Center, where they have a live narrator and a live orchestra. I'm going to Steam Dev Days in Seattle, so I can't go to that. Very sad about that. But other things should be on stage.
I mean, certainly I think you could have a pretty good play about the opening level of Thief.
Yes.
A lot of people talking about taffing around. I'd like to see Pong, the play. I think there's a lot you could do with that that could work. So that's the end of that. Right, we sashay sassily into the film and television lounge area, and it's going to be, in fact, the video games lounge area because we didn't quite have enough video games in the show. So you want to talk about the game Starbound, I believe. Yeah, I've just started playing Starbound again because it's 1.0 has been released. And I'm looking after my 6-week-old son a lot, which means I have a lot of time to play sort of quite an easygoing, addictive game such as Starbound. And I'm not so sure. I played a lot of Starbound almost 3 years ago. My daughter was born, and I really enjoyed that. It's basically sort of a Terraria in space alike. And what they've been doing since then has been putting on quite a lot of linear-ish, sort of more traditional gamey stuff with missions. It's still got like sort of fly to a random planet and mine the random planet, and they've definitely, vastly increased the bunch of cool random stuff you can find. So that element is still absolutely excellent, but it doesn't quite sit properly with a lot of the sort of overly produced linear stuff. So I don't know if I think that they've ruined it per se, but I think it got 86% in PC Gamer, and it's one of those games where it's really hard to give Starbound 86%. It's massively addictive. It does a huge number of things incredibly well. It's got 1,000 hours in it if you want what it's selling. But it just kind of feels like a worse game for a lot of these things that they've added. It really felt like a more groundbreaking, exciting game back then.
Yeah, it's sort of sad to see you say that, really. I mean, they kind of started off with these very strong principles, and then they've gone down this direction, which I can imagine a lot of people not liking. But again, I mean, this does also seem to be a case of, like, they had to finish it. They had to take it in a direction and finish it, and that seems like a huge achievement in itself. So I guess there's that. I mean, my problem with
the stuff they've added is of a generally really high quality, and I think, if you're 11, I think really awesome as well. I just think that it's close, even with this new stuff, it's close to being like an all-time game. If this game was on the SNES, it would be completely amazing. But there's some dissonance with its themes that doesn't quite work.
Coherence. I was going to say, like, these more complex games, I think one of the reasons I really like No Man's Sky is it's so obvious to me how limited the crafting is. I don't feel like I need to be going out and doing all this crafting stuff and finding this weird mineral, because I know there isn't much to it. And so that's made me embrace the crafting. I like it because it's simple. I can keep it all in my head and I don't have to think about it. And I can play the game for 20 minutes a day and not care. So the thing that always puts me off, I mean, I enjoy playing Terraria until the Vita version crashed and lost my save, and then I never wanted to play it again. But this, I own it. I haven't played it because I don't have enough space in my brain.
There you go.
So I've been playing Deus Ex Revision, which we did talk about on the show a bit. It's the first mod I've really got into. And I'm just sort of making me have some more design thoughts related to Deus Ex. And I said to you today that I got to the level with the mole people, where they're in a big, long tunnel underneath this subway station, and then you come out, and there's a big sort of NSF base with a helicopter, and they take the sort of drug that's in the plot there. And that level, it feels like it should be awesome. You're kind of going through this tunnel, you're infiltrating this base. And on the way into the base, there are like these puzzle rooms where you have the choice between hacking a panel, pushing a crate into this thing and blowing up the sort of alert sensor, or going through a really annoying tunnel. And those are the choices, and you can't do anything other than those. And it feels to me like the freedom of choice thing in Deus Ex 1, it only really came together at sort of very specific points in the game. Sometimes it was too hard to do overt combat, so you were forced into doing stealth. Sometimes, you couldn't really do stealth because of the level layout. The perfect Deus Ex levels are the ones where all the systems flow together, and it does seem to me like quite a lot of that was luck.
Yeah, I think that it's a lot about level design, because these are, your options are go in shooting, go in stealthily, unlock something weird with your hacking tool, unlock something else with an actual key from having talked to someone, blow something weird up. These are when you actually look back on it, these are fairly blunt instruments, and it's sort of up to the level design, I think, to make you. It's almost about it being exciting to find where those avenues are. So I think, all in all, I think Thief did a better job of making the excitement in the discovery of where these other possibilities are.
Yes.
More consistently. I remember bad Deus Ex levels where it was just like, it was so obvious where these options were that they kind of became bad. But of course, the levels which did really well were excellent. I think the game most recently that did this phenomenally well was Metal Gear Solid 5. I think that it had bigger levels and it had a lot of different options, and it managed to make it feel like those were all sort of somewhat emergent rather than just being one of 3 specific paths. But, I'm not being rude about Deus Ex. Deus Ex got it right a lot and was the first game to get it right at all.
Designing levels for emergence is just really difficult. It's got to be something you kind of allow to happen, because Deus Ex is often at its best when you try a stealthy approach, it's largely successful, then it goes wrong, and because of the place that you're in, the way the guards react is interesting, and you can respond to that in turn. And that's not really something you can design for, because that could happen at any point on the level. The guard patrol routes have to be good, the locations of the alarms have to be good, the security systems have to be good, and so on. But it's just like you have to get the systemic balance right to get the emergence coming out of it well.
Yeah, I mean, it's 2 different levels of emergence, right? Or 2 different levels of multi-optionness, the really high-level stuff of what the broad category you're going to take is, and then when it comes to how the guards are behaving, and can you stack up some boxes in a weird place, and can you hide somewhere weird and then take them all out. And it's really fun when the game is balanced so that using exploits feels powerful but not overpowered.
Yes.
And that's something that Deus Ex really did get right.
Yeah.
I think more than the sort of you can use the hacking tool to get into this area thing.
Just one final thing. It really backs up a discussion that we've had before. To make this kind of game fun, you need the AI to be bad. Like, the AI shouldn't be good at finding you. It's reasonable at finding you in Deus Ex. It's got some weird quirks. Like, if you're under something, it almost instantly forgets where you are. So if you go under like a sort of a level or a little outcropping or a pier or something, the guards just can't find you. And knowing those tricks is part of the fun. So the AI has to be weird, and it has to behave according to these quite odd rules. And getting that balance of oddness and sort of perceived realism and quality right is so hard.
Yeah, getting that balance right is really an art, because you're right, you need to have it be really consistent mechanically. But actually, you can't have it be just robotic, because that really undermines it as well. You want the player to be able to have a bit of his brain that is anthropomorphizing these people as like stupid guards, not as mindless robots. So I think it's important to have some unpredictable behavior, but while getting those larger mechanic rules right. Yeah, they should forget about you really quickly, because that's how the game works.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Good. Right, that's enough of that. And we descend into the overly linear dungeon of games that were released this week in 2006, thanks to Eurogamer. I had to do this on my own last time.
Oh no.
So I'm going to make you do all the work. No, I'm not. Texas Hold'em on the Xbox 360. I still don't know the rules of poker. I've got to the age of 33, not knowing the rules of poker. I don't know how long that's going to continue. Maybe the rest of my life.
That's pretty good going, man.
Dig Dug Digging Strike on the DS.
I actually tweeted about this game a couple of weeks ago, unrelated to this segment, just because, this was the height, or peak, if you will, just to troll you about a useful word you don't like. The games on the DS like to have subtitles that had the initials DS. I think Dig Dug Digging Strike is the stupidest.
Yes. I think that's true. It's peak Dig Dug. Dig Dug
guest appearance from your cat.
Oh, is he? Oh, yeah, you can hear him. He's being annoying. I can't be bothered to throw him out, so we might have to just deal with it.
Doesn't matter. It adds flavour.
No, I don't know. Dig Dug was one of the first games I ever played, because my dad had it on his network at the school where he was an IT teacher.
It was very important to me early on as well.
It's a good game. Let's Make a Soccer Team on the PlayStation 2, which is a great name for a game.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that.
Good. Madden 2007 on the PC, Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PSP. I played Madden 2006, but I did not play Madden 2007.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure 2007 added the weird view cone thing, where you moved the quarterback's sort of view cone independently to how you moved him and the passing cursor. So you could like fake out defenders. You'd be much more accurate if you were looking at a receiver for a bit of time before you passed it. And yes.
Marvellous. 99 Nights on the Xbox 360. Now, I've heard of this, but I
think
don't
this is
know
a
why.
third-person slashing game.
slashing game.
As it were. British people will enjoy that joke.
Oh yes, I've seen this. This is quite a weird game actually. It's a brawler with loads and loads and loads of enemies simultaneously, that all kind of look the same, and I think this has like a big cult following actually. There was a sequel as well. Yes, no, this is a kind of forgotten brawler classic, forgotten 360 classic as well. Reservoir Dogs on the Xbox, PlayStation 2, and PC.
Wow, I'm sure that's not terrible at all.
No, but there is something. Again, this rings a bell. Something to do with this. Maybe it wasn't as terrible as people thought, or something like that.
3 out of 10 from IGN.
It was okay. Siphon Filter Dark Mirror on the PSP. I've never played a Siphon Filter game.
No, maybe I'll get it on the Vita later.
World War One: Aces of the Sky on the PlayStation 2. I'm a bit surprised someone made a World War One dogfighting game for the PS2. That doesn't seem like a natural fit for me.
Well, there weren't as many planes in World War One.
That's true, and it's kind of Red Barony. There we go. That's enough of that. As the meowing continues, we head towards the top 10 UK Steam games. And at number 10, it's Football Manager 2017. I haven't played a football management game for ages, and I think maybe I should. Maybe I should get back into that. I used to play those games a fair amount. Worms WMD at number 9. You're not a fan of this. You don't like the art, do you?
No. Basically, I really think Worms 1, if you turned off homing missiles and airstrikes and teleporters, was just an all-time amazingly well-balanced, pared down, brilliant multiplayer game. And everything they've done since is make the game look less charming and play worse. So I'm angry about Worms.
Well, we should make that game with a different type of small fauna.
I would be all in favour of that.
Well, let's do that. Abduction, registered trademark at number 8. This is the Mist-alike, which you nearly bought.
Yeah, raised $1.3 million on Kickstarter.
Wow.
I am kind of tempted to play whatever they think a modern Myst should be like. I'm actually really close to buying this.
Okay.
I'm like 1.5 coronas away from buying this.
I've never played Myst. I'm a bad games pundit.
It's better than The Witness.
Number 7, The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt at 33% off. Number 6, Fernbus Simulator.
Okay.
Now this is a surprise, as it's another one of your bus simulators. It's kind of these German coaches, which I think are a bit like mega buses, called Fernbuses. It looks nice. Why are these games so popular? I don't really know. Number 5 is No Man's Sky. Number 4 is Dark Souls 3, 33% off. Number 3 is Crusader Kings 2, The Reaper's Due, which I guess is yet another Crusader Kings 2 expansion. The game
CK2 is just money in the bank.
Keeps growing. Well done to Paradox. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, again, number 2, 50% off. Number 1 is Deus Ex Mankind Divided. Now, I started playing Deus Ex 1 again because I knew this was coming out and wanted to get my Deus Ex hat on. People are trying to get me to play Invisible War. I don't know if I'm going to succumb to that. So it's going to be a while. I said I was going to play Human Revolution again before I played this because I didn't like Human Revolution. I felt I needed the context. Are you going to be playing this?
I keep kind of vaguely wanting to, but I really disliked Human Revolution to such an extreme level that I don't think I can cope with this.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I feel like if I can make myself enjoy Human Revolution in some way, then I'll be qualified to buy this game. So that's going to be the process.
Sure.
Right, that's enough of that. Let's briefly spelunk down to the horrible pit of your listener questions. And Christos Reed asks, why don't you like games, Paul? And the answer to that is because games are silly and for children. David G. Barrett asks, what do you think the next overhyped game will be? Well, I mean, Star Citizen is the obvious choice. I think we might start getting a bit more purple prose on Star Citizen as we get towards launch. But you can't really predict these things, can you? They kind of come out of nowhere. They capture the zeitgeist, like No Man's Sky did. Do you have any submissions for next overhyped game?
Yeah, no, I kind of think that it hasn't been announced yet. Because it'll be something which is marketed in a certain way and has a concept which immediately gets people very excited. So I just don't think we've seen it yet.
Binsa asks, what is the furthest robot, or strictly furthest robot, which I will not be answering. And he asks, what is your favourite 90s R&B song? I'm going to go with TLC Waterfalls, I think.
I literally could not sort of reliably place songs in the genre of R&B versus drum and bass versus pop. I just can't do it, so I don't know. I really like that Jennifer Lopez song where she talks about where she came from, the Bronx.
That'll do. Do you think multiplayer, this is from Ripper, do you think multiplayer will be in the final game, or will you remove it 1 week before release to fuck with people? And I think that question answers
Maybe
itself.
with our next game we'll do that. I don't think we'll do that with this game.
That's enough of that. This was a good show. Thank you for joining us once again. You should follow us on Twitter. I'm Mode7Games. He's Ian Harding, and we'll see you next week. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
That's it, children. Time for bed. Don't forget to pay us a visit at www.visitingthevillage.com.